On the 6th of November, 1964, the political activist and composer of freedom songs, Voisili Mini, is executed. Leaving his cell, his jailer sarcastically asks him if he'll sing on his way to the gallows. Walking to his death, Voisili Mini and all the prisoners in the Pretoria jail intone one of the songs written by Mini. Watch out, Fairfoot. The black man will get you. South Africa, known for its brutal past, possesses a treasure richer than its underground gold and diamonds, a weapon more powerful than its tanks and AK-47s, its freedom songs. You can kill a human being, but not their voice. On the southernmost tip of Africa, the traveler can set out on an adventuresome journey to the San, the Ndebele, the Xhosa, Zulus, Boer, East Indian, and Cape Malay peoples. South Africa, the Rainbow Nation. In Cape Town, or the Cape of Good Hope, on the southwest point of the African continent, the fresh sea air gently mingles with the upward wafting scents of native gardens. It is here that the Atlantic and Indian Oceans meet and caress the fine white sand. Millionaires' homes overlook the beaches. With a surface 2 times greater than France and a population of 40,500,000, South Africa occupies only 4% of the African continent, but contributes 30% of the gross national income. Its status of the economic leader for the African continent is largely due to its underground riches. 1/4 of the Earth's diamonds and nearly half of its gold are found in South Africa. South Africa is a country of contrasts, peace and violence, rich and poor, blacks and whites. One finds here some of the most beautiful countryside in the world, and some of the most distressing, the most fertile, and the most arid of lands. There is an abundance of fabulous wealth, but also a shortage of the most essential basic goods. South Africa is both heaven and hell. South Africa is a country that's used up a lot of ink in the world press in the 20th century, often appearing as a lead story denouncing injustice and oppression. Paradoxically, South Africa is the recipient of 4 Nobel Peace Prizes. South Africa is a singing country. The different peoples, of whom 3/4 are black, the others, white, colors, and Indian, have all sung freedom songs at one time or another in their history. Freedom from oppression or from injustice. Freedom from poverty or from sexism. Freedom from hunger or from drought. The South Africans, throughout their history, have used song as a weapon in their quest for freedom. The world best knows the freedom songs associated with the apartheid regime. These freedom anthems were decisive in the struggle for freedom in South Africa. Songs that from the 80s onward were accompanied by a dance called the Toi Toi. 17th century, the destiny of the Cape changes forever. For the Cape represents an almost obligatory stop. Nicknamed Cape Storm at the time, Africa's tip is a hard test for navigators. And even today, wrecks are not foreign to these shores. In 1652, Dutchman Jan van Riebeck lands at the Cape with 90 men to establish a supply base for the most important commercial business of the world at the time, the United East India Company. Unable to interest the local natives, the San, in farming, Jan van Riebeck frees his company men to go work in the fields. This was the birth of the Boers, or the Afrikaners, the white Dutch farmers. Jan van Riebeck was ordered to create a white European community on this tip of the African continent. Unable to dig the canal desired by his superiors, thereby creating a barrier to an island of white people, Jan van Riebeck decides instead to plant a very long thorn hedge. The symbolic effect is the same. Apartheid is born, even if it is only baptized as such 300 years later. On the other side of the hedge were not only the first inhabitants of South Africa, but the first inhabitants of the earth. They are a short people, with a remarkable skill for killing animals by applying a very harmful poison to their arrow tips. The Europeans pejoratively called these people Hottentots and Bushmen. In fact, it's the Khoi and the San, two peoples close to each other, who are known today as the Khoisan. According to scientists, the Khoisan are our ancestors, the Adams and Eves of Earth. 20% of Khoisans, compared to 2% with other Africans and 0% for the rest of the world, possess a certain gene that directly links them to the first human beings. The Khoisan speak a clicking language, sounds found today in other South African languages and dialects, such as Xhosa and Zulu, a direct influence from the Khoisan. The San developed extraordinary aptitudes to design colored frescoes on their cave walls, with minerals, ground-up plants, ostrich yolks, and antelope blood. South African paintings are 6,000 years old, while sites in southern Namibia are 27,000 years old. Steve Bassett is passionate about San painting and devotes his life to the reproduction and conservation of these works of art.
I think if we look at the paintings in conjunction with the mythology, with the written record of interviews with Bushmen in the last century, we see that there's a lot of religiousness in the paintings. We learn about their love of song, we learn about their love of ceremony, of ritual that were performed for various reasons, the coming together of clans, of bands of people. We know that they were hunter-gatherer people. They had to be in tune with their environment. They were not pastoralists or farming people, so they had to know the environment very, very well, and they respected the environment, and there was a sense of humility. And when we look at the art, we see that attention to detail, that ability of theirs to see what was around them, to be aware, to be alert, and to record what they saw and what they saw in the spirit world.
The Khoisan are known as God's children. It is said that they have the divine ability to summon rain, from whence their nickname, the Rainmakers. the whites arrived 350 years ago, the Khoisan population was over 200,000. However, a cruel sport practiced by the whites nearly wiped them out. They were hunted for the pleasure of killing. It's called genocide. Today, the remaining 50,000 Khoisan are spread out over southern Africa. South African wines have an excellent reputation. The first vineyards were planted here in Constantia, a suburb of Cape Town. The grapevines arrived with the French Huguenots, Protestants fleeing religious persecution under Louis XIV. The climate and soil in the Cape area will promote prosperous development of the vineyards. Today, the French influence remains visible in this region, especially in the streets and cafes of the town of Franschhoek, near Cape Town. In Constantia, the country resident Sellers-Hohenor was originally the wine cellar for the Cape's governor. This house, that both Napoleon and Jane Austen helped become famous, has become a Relais chateau known for its good food. Naturally, one finds the best wines the Cape has to offer.
The Sellers-Hohenor, where we are now, has a very interesting history. It was given by the governor in 1690 to his doctor, but it was a very famous house, and it had an enormous amount of land, mostly under vines. The house changed hands many times, with various families planting the grapes and producing some wonderful wine. All the wines from the southern hemisphere have a similarity. They're fresh and young and different. I think the most important thing is not to liken them to the French wines, because they are so different. But I think we can stand in South Africa on our own with our wines, as long as we don't try to compare to those of Europe. We are different.
The need for massive manpower to work in the vineyards and on the colony's farms, and for the construction and upkeep of residences and fortifications, pushed the whites to import black slaves more haughty than the Khoisans. These slaves came from other African countries, like Angola and Madagascar, but a large number are imported from Malaysia and Indonesia, which explains the large number of Muslims in the Cape's population. It's here, a stone's throw from the Parliament, that the slaves were herded, bought, and sold. It is this mixture of slaves of different origins that gave birth to a new South African language called Afrikaans. Close to Dutch, this language has Asian and African roots. Today, two peoples, the Afrikaners and the Coloreds, share the same mother tongue. But there are important nuances between the Afrikaans language spoken by the Afrikaners and the Coloreds. A thorn hedge is not enough to keep two peoples separated. Eventually, after wars and sickness, the Khoisan became integrated into the already very diversified Cape mixture of Africans, Asians, and whites. They were known then as Coloreds.
How does it feel to live as a colored in this country? Is the fact that I think there's so many levels of exclusion on the one hand, and secondly on the other, is that there's a lot of what is not known, that is undescribed, that is not being part of people's history. So it's a whole history of negation for people. Many people have accepted the description, the category, because that's the way that in the South Africa people survive and make their lives, because now they can know that they've got a clear identity. But the whole thing about color is that it's a multiplicity of identities that you're working with.
The Coon Carnival is an exclusively colored people celebration. On the 2nd of January every year, Cape Town streets swarm with people. The first mention of a parade goes back to 1823. January 1st was the only day the slaves could call their own, as it was their one day of yearly holiday. When the British abolished slavery in 1833, the coloreds had no desire to commemorate the period of their enslavement, and so chose to celebrate their freedom the 2nd of January each year. Towards 1850, a new influence manifested itself in the celebrations of the Cape slave. It was that of black-faced minstrels, white American musicians and singers made up as black singers, an idea found amusing by American whites and Europeans. The colored liked the idea as well, putting on whiteface and integrating it into their annual January 2nd parade, known as Coon Carnival. The name Coon refers to the black and white mask of the raccoon. Coon Carnival joyously expresses the colored people's cry from the heart for freedom. The colored have another typical tradition which lies in their Malaysian choirs. They preserve pronounced Malaysian and Indonesian influences. Over the years, these songs express their daily concerns and their social and political struggles. In 1795, while different European countries fall to Napoleon Bonaparte's troops, an English flotilla of warships sails 10,000 kilometers on the Atlantic Ocean on a mission that will change the course of South African history. Her destination, the Dutch colony at the Cape of Good Hope.
We have reached the Cape.
Her orders, to take the territory. The reason, the lucrative commerce with the East Indies is in jeopardy after the French defeat of the Dutch monarchy. But the Boers, also known as Afrikaners, farmers descended from the Dutch and French Huguenots, don't get along with the English. When the British finally abolished slavery and put a surtax on the white colonists, the Boers undertake the Great Trek in 1835. A huge migration to the north of the country. The migration will take 8 years. Between 12 and 15,000 families, accompanied by their servants and their slaves, flee the British regime. After numerous conflicts with several small African tribes, they established 2 republics, the Orange Free State and the Transvaal. The time of the Great Trek marked South Africa's history. The migration of these white slave owners, fleeing in their turn to conserve their freedom and their convictions, symbolized the independent spirit of the Boers and gave birth to white nationalism. It is still possible to retrace the different routes taken by the Great Trek families, thanks to traces strewn here and there the length of the country. The Voortrekkers, which means pioneers, are the heroes of the Afrikaner people. These Voortrekkers also sang their own songs of freedom during their migration to an unknown land. Songs that often asked God to help them be free. In 1866, in Hopetown near Kimberley, a small village in the center of the country, Louisa and Erasmus Jacob played with pretty shiny stones that they found on the neighboring farm near the banks of the Orange River. A traveling salesman, John O'Reilly, immediately recognizes their true value and acquires these so-called toys. A small stone of 21 carats finally ends up in the hands of the Cape's colonial secretary, who declares this is the stone upon which South Africa's success will be built. This country, without roads, without railways, without banks, quietly becomes the main point of attraction for all the adventurers of the planet. From this stone, baptized Eureka, the town of Kimberley will grow up in a matter of months. Kimberley, the sparkling city. 50,000 diamond prospectors from around the world fill the bars, the brothels, and the quickly erected hotels. They all dream of fortune and glory. By an ironic twist of fate, it's a modest African cook named Damon who discovers the most important diamond deposit in the world in a hill on the De Beers brothers' farm. In half a century, nearly 3 tons of diamonds, or 14,504,566 carats, will be extracted from the hill. The word carat comes from a natural measuring unit. The seeds of the carob tree initially served to measure the weight of diamonds. Today, the only reminder of the millions of carats formerly buried on the De Beers Hill is this gigantic hole, abandoned now to the tourist industry. The Big Hole is the largest man-made crater in the world. In the press of adventurers fighting over diamonds, gold seekers invade South Africa. The city of Johannesburg will be founded after the discovery of the first gold field. While the discovery of gold makes everyone happy, its exploitation rapidly becomes an area of conflict between the Boers and the English. The Boer War, which rages between 1899 and 1902, is ruthless. The Boers fight a rural guerrilla war against the powerful, well-equipped, and well-trained English army. For each act of sabotage, the English destroy farms, ravage crops, and kidnap women and children to place them in what they call refugee camps. In fact, they are history's first concentration camps. 26,000 Afrikaner women and children will die here from neglect and disease. Today, 100 years after the Boer War, accumulations of gold residue decorate the vibrant, multiracial city of Johannesburg. World capital for gold and the heart of the country's economic activity, Johannesburg is an immense metropolis, with the neighboring black city of Soweto, created under apartheid. Soweto, which stands for the Southwestern Townships. Johannesburg still echoes to the steps of the black miners. The difficult and arduous task of extracting gold inspired the miners to create a new form of freedom music. Coming from many places, speaking many languages and different dialects, they let their rubber boots do the talking, using them as musical instruments to communicate amongst themselves. A dance is born 3 kilometers underground. Gumboot dancing. During apartheid, miners had to leave their families in one of 10 Bantustans, territories given by the whites to each of South Africa's 10 groups of ethnic blacks. The Ndebele people were given the Bantustan of KwaNdebele in the east of the country. The Ndebele have incorporated many cultural influences from other Africans in the expression of their own art and music. The Ndebele are recognized today for their remarkable art that reflects their history, their social status, their emotions, and their aspirations. Executed by women, the symmetry of the art painted on the village houses is exceptionally precise work. These geometrically astute women design their motifs by eye, without the help of any tool. The art of the Ndebele spills over into all aspects of daily life, from dress to colorful decorations. The Ndebele form a strongly patriarchal society where polygamy is still practiced. Ironically, the women have an important place at the heart of this society, expressing themselves through art, song, and dance. To the south of the Ndebele territory, KwaZulu-Natal is the home state of a few historically belligerent peoples. In the 16th century, a man named Zulu arrives here with his clan. In 1785, Senzanga Kona becomes the Zulu chief. He meets a pretty girl, Nandi. But Nandi belongs to another clan. This forbidden passion will change the Zulu course of history. Nandi becomes pregnant, and Senzanga Kona doesn't accept her. Angrily, he tells her that she is carrying an ishaka, an intestinal beetle, and banishes her forever. Nandi, ostracized by her family and by her village, gives birth to a baby boy in miserable conditions. People make fun of her and cruelly nickname her son Shaka, or Beetle. Nandi, mother of an illegitimate child who is in fact the son of the Zulu king, must beg to survive, and will wander with her son for 16 years. They are chased away from every village with blows and stones and verbal abuse. Shaka is shocked by his mother's unworthy treatment. A bullied and humiliated adolescent, Shaka starts to train himself alone on the high plateau. It's a draconian training that will allow him to take revenge for his and his mother's fate. Day after day, he learns how to handle a spear and to fight with imaginary adversaries. Shaka is preparing to meet his destiny, that of a great warrior. In 1816, 1 year after the death of his father, Senzanga Kona, the Zulu chief, Shaka takes over the throne he was denied. The bastard son transforms Zulu warriors into a powerful army, the most formidable one in Africa. Under Shaka's rule, different tribes are unified, and his kingdom is called KwaZulu, which means the place for paradise dwellers. When his mother dies in 1827, Shaka has thousands of innocents executed so that everyone shares his pain. This senseless act will result in his assassination 1 year later by his half-brother Dingane. Today, Goodwill Zwelithini is king of the Zulus. A descendant of Shaka's father, Goodwill Zwelithini was crowned in 1971.
Today, the living standard of culture amongst the Zulu people is because of contributions which was done in the past by previous kings who followed in the steps of King Shaka. Because King Shaka didn't just fight to destroy, but he fight to build, the nation. Which actually is very impressive, because even the songs that are being sang, even today by even the small children of our nation, they still come from afar. And most of those songs are very impressive. The key that is important is that we revive, because we're made by our own kings to be under a unifying force, and then we've been made by our songs, the songs of victory.
Shaka's half-brother Dingane, known for his love of song and dance, composed his own songs. But Dingane is especially known for his merciless acts. In 1838, during the Boers' Great Trek, he has their leader, Piet Retief, and 500 others who have come to negotiate for land, assassinated. On the 16th of December, 1838, at Blood River, this event will trigger one of the most bloody battles from the Great Trek period. Surrounded during the night, 464 Boers will face 10,000 Zulu warriors in the morning. The Boers unleash themselves on their adversary. 3,000 Zulus are massacred, compared to only 3 wounded Boers. The victors interpret this miraculous victory as a divine sign. God has chosen them to lead South Africa. Boer songs reflect this belief. On June 7, 1893, Mohandas Gandhi, at the time a young East Indian lawyer on a legal mission in South Africa, got himself thrown off a train at the Pietermaritzburg station because of his color. The young lawyer stayed on in this country for 21 years to fight for equality and justice. He was to later say, "I was born in India, but I was formed in South Africa."
Prior to Gandhi's coming to South Africa had a mode of struggle which was violence. They had wars over the years, and Gandhi brought the idea of non-violent struggle into this country. It influenced not only South Africa, but the whole of Africa.
On the shores of the Indian Ocean and the slopes of KwaZulu-Natal, Durban, the second largest city in the country with more than 3 million inhabitants, is the meeting place of East and West. It's also a popular vacation destination. In addition to its exceptional beaches and subtropical climate, Durban is also known for its large East Indian population. The architecture, the music, the visual arts, all combine to give a visitor the impression of being on 2 continents at the same time. It's an agreeable reminder that South Africa would not be what it is today without its East Indian influence. At the south of KwaZulu-Natal, in the Eastern Cape region, the Xhosas also sing liberation songs. As with the Zulus, cattle have an important place in Xhosa tradition. It has an exchange value. In order to marry a girl, the groom's father pays the future wife's family cows as a dowry. Polygamy is also part of their traditions. However, after menopause, Xhosa women obtain equality with men and acquire the rights, among others, to smoke the long pipe and drink homemade beer. In Xhosa society, as in nearly all African societies, each stage of life corresponds to special music. Music rhythmically paces social life and marks rites of passage for each individual. The Eastern Cape Province, the Xhosa region, will be the birthplace in the fight for freedom from apartheid. Steve Biko, founder of the Black Conscience Movement, tortured and murdered by the apartheid police, was born here. One of the greatest leaders of this century was also born in this Eastern Cape province. Nelson Mandela. He who will unite this country of 1,001 peoples will grow up in the small village of Kunu. Born on the 18th of July, 1918, his baptismal name, Roli Shlashla, means turbulent child. Roli Shlashla Mandela affirms that his most wonderful childhood memories come from here, on the Kunu Hills, singing and playing tinti and swimming in the river. In his autobiography, Nelson Mandela recounts his first day of school. On the first day of school, my teacher, Miss Mningane, gave each of us an English name and said that thenceforth that was the name we would answer to in school. This was the custom among Africans in those days, and was undoubtedly due to the British bias of our education. The education I received was a British education, in which British ideas, British culture, and British institutions were automatically assumed to be superior. There was no such thing as African culture.
To the door. Two little fingers up, tap, tap, tap. Two little fingers up, tap, tap, tap. Going to the roof, going to the door.
Music, song, and dance will occupy a very important role all of Nelson Mandela's life.
Music is one of the best ways of communication, because whether you understand the language or not, you are able to reach quotas which can never, which are beyond the reach of ordinary politicians. Human beings everywhere like to listen to music. And Africans, not only in South or Southern Africa, are very fond of music. And it was there even before the struggle started in the 17th century. But the blooming of what we have come now to know as freedom songs was a measure of the determination of the people in a clear, connected, and disciplined fashion of expressing the ideas for which they are fighting. And music, therefore, has played an important role in galvanizing the people, mobilizing them for a common cause, and giving them the strength and the hope in the future that whatever problems they have, ultimately, they will triumph, or good will triumph over evil.
In his fight against apartheid, and during his 27 years in prison, Mandela will sing, like other black prisoners, one of the most popular freedom songs of South Africa, composed by Vuyisile Mini.
There's only one song I can remember, the one which Mini invented, composed, and sang. Yes, it was composed by him. But of course, these freedom songs are monologues, as you can see from this one. Nansindo demnyama straightdom, Nansindo demnyama straightdom, Nansindo demnyama straightdom, Nansindo demnyama straightdom, Pasopa Nansindo demnyama straightdom, Pasopa Nansindo demnyama straightdom. Now, that was sung by Mini. It meant something new. There's the black man, and you repeat that 4 times. Then you say, Straydom, who was the prime minister at this time, look out. There is the black man. That's the only one I can remember.
Vuyisile Mini, a martyr in the fight against apartheid, is also a native of the Eastern Cape. On November the 6th, 1964, Vuyisile Mini was hung by the apartheid government because he refused to name his colleagues, activists in the armed struggle of the African National Congress. Watch out, Fairfoot. The black man is coming. Fairfoot is Hendrik French Fairfoot, Prime Minister of South Africa from 1958 to 1966. Throughout South African prisons and in training camps for the ANC's armies spread out across Africa, everyone sang with Mini on November the 6th, 1964. Watch out, Fairfoot. The black man is coming.
When we arrived in Robben Island and were sent to the quarry to dig lion, one of the ways in which we maintained ourselves was to sing. So much so that the prison authorities ordered us to stop singing because they realized that we were not feeling the rigorousness of the punishment, the digging of lime, because we were in the best of moods, and they told us to stop.
After 27 years of incarceration, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela is elected President of South Africa in May of 1994. He is 75 years old. The country is in great celebration. Song and dance reign. After 350 years of atrocities, the reconciliation of this country's many peoples is the single greatest challenge for South Africa, a country where there are 11 official languages. Yesterday, prisoners of governmental power, the songs were of hope and freedom. Today, the songs continue on behalf of other freedoms. And there is singing as a reminder that if the powerful were able to prevent a whole people from working, from educating themselves, and providing for their most basic needs, apartheid's laws and guns will never destroy the only arm of a people without resources, their freedom songs. It was a war between armed strength and the strength of the soul. The soul won.